lot of people are really fascinated by hypnosis. I'm Wesley Anderson. I'm a doctor of clinical hypnotherapy, and I've helped thousands of people with hypnosis since 1988. I've helped people stop smoking without any cravings, without any weight gain, without any withdrawal symptoms. I've helped them lose weight and develop natural eating habits that are so easy and so comfortable that it's very simple for them to maintain their ideal weight. I've helped people eliminate fears and phobias in a matter of hours. The videos on this website are designed to give you the information that you need to make an informed decision about whether hypnosis is appropriate for you and whether I'm the best hypnotherapist for you. So take a look around, find out about hypnosis, get a sense of who I am and how I work. I'm Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy. Please enjoy exploring the subject of hypnosis and hypnotherapy on my website. Thank you, Morgan. So I've been talking about Amanda, 17 years old. She's an oboe player, and she developed an anxiety about auditioning. Now she's played with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, she's played with the Los Angeles Youth Orchestra, so she is someone who's a very good musician and is getting professional jobs even at her early age. And a typical approach by most hypnotherapists to someone with an anxiety like that might be what we call end-point imagery, which is simply Amanda's in a hypnotic state and she's instructed to see herself sitting calmly, doing a great audition, and that's repeated a few times. That's end-point imagery, and it's giving her a suggestion about what to do in those circumstances. Another thing that might be the case for someone who's doing a more conventional type of hypnotherapy is that she's just told you're very calm when you're auditioning. You feel great. You enjoy the process. Those are all just direct suggestions. Another technique that people will typically use is called progressive desensitization, which I usually stumble over the word for some reason. And so imagine getting ready for your audition to the point where just before the anxiety starts. Well, let that anxiety step into that moment, a little bit of anxiety, and just wait until you get calmer, and then calmer and calmer, eventually all the way through the whole process. So what I did with Amanda was point out something to her that was absolutely true. She's a musician. Yes, that's true. Musicians love music. They love to perform. They love the act of performing. And every musician loves having an audience. Okay, so what this is doing is it's changing the audition from something to be dreaded to, oh gosh, I have an audience. And so that's a really positive for her. Another thing about the audition is that the auditioners are behind a curtain. They can't see the person being auditioned, so they don't judge them on their appearance. And every one of those judges who are auditioning love music. That's why they're there. They want Amanda to do a beautiful, wonderful job because they get to enjoy it. And everybody wins. Okay. Well, now Amanda's starting to feel very differently about this whole process of auditioning. And so my style is something that's very naturalistic in the sense that I'm reminding the person of things that are true for them. And that's changing the experience by doing what we call reframing. So audition doesn't mean time for anxiety, it means an audience. Cool, I get a chance to perform. Now, after I did my session with Amanda, she reported back that the next time she auditioned, there was somebody sitting there waiting with her for the audition. He was anxious, and she helped him calm down. So another student, she's in a performing arts magnet school here in the Atlanta area, a singer, and she came to see me because she was anxious over taking tests. Well, when we sat down, it turns out it wasn't just any test, it was math. Now, anybody here think about the naturalistic way to approach math anxiety in a musician? Okay, math is music is all mathematical. One of the first things you learn when you're reading music is time signatures. You've got a 4/4 time signature. That means there's 4 beats per measure, and a quarter note is 1 beat. And so we start with that beat. Okay, that's mathematical. The intervals between notes, which make harmonies, that's mathematical as well. 1, 3, 5, 8. Well, that is a major chord. C is 1, and then E, and so on up the scale. And also, every harmony is harmonic because the vibrations, the frequencies of the sound are going to be in resonance with one another. Oh gosh, she's not feeling so scared about math anymore because she knows that something that she loves, which is music, is mathematical. And so how can she be afraid of math? And it's simply a matter of helping her associate those feelings of enjoying the experience of music with mathematics. And of course, taking a test is just simply demonstrating one's knowledge of the material that's been covered. Another reframe that I use with people who have test anxiety is that instead of calling it a test, I call it a learning inventory. We get a chance to inventory what it is that we've learned so far and what we haven't learned yet. And particularly in the public schools, the state is kind enough to pay people to develop learning inventories so that we can determine how much we've learned and what we haven't learned yet. Okay, well, this is a different way of thinking and feeling about things. I pointed out to her that when I was growing up, they didn't use the word test. They called it a learning experience, which is another reframe. And that's a way of developing a different set of feelings about the experience. So telling stories is a way to get across information that if I just dryly recited the facts, here's the pattern, here's what I did, would not have nearly the impact or the meaningfulness of telling it as a story. When you give referrals for me, you tell people my stories, which they're interesting, so you get to have an interesting conversation. They're going to hear those stories, and some of them are going to think, oh, my daughter has been anxious about certain kinds of tests. Maybe she could be helped by hypnosis. And people will apply it to themselves. I wonder if hypnosis can help me fly comfortably. I wonder if I can become more comfortable speaking in public. Hypnosis might be a little helpful. I'm Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnosis. Thank you, Paige. So, your friend Hannah gave birth a few months ago. She's nursing. She stopped smoking when she was pregnant, and now she started again. The baby's here, and she's wanting to stop. She's pretty frustrated about it. She's afraid to try the Chantix or some of the other drugs because she's still nursing. She's found willpower is ineffective. And you mentioned that hypnotherapy can be helpful. It's more than 10 times as effective as willpower for stopping smoking, more than 3 times as effective as Chantix and the other drugs. And she says, oh no, what if I get stuck in hypnosis? So what do you say? Well, the answer is really simple. Nobody can get stuck in hypnosis. As a matter of fact, hypnosis, the brainwave state of hypnosis is halfway between being awake and being asleep. Everybody's been there thousands and thousands of times in their lifetime already. And if someone's in a hypnotic state, one of 3 things is going to happen. Either they're going to go into natural physiological sleep and they'll wake up. When they wake up, they will spontaneously come out of hypnosis, or they will come out of hypnosis when I ask them to. I mean, basically, no mind states remains forever and ever. We all know that there are no large numbers of institutions for the hypnotically stuck dotting the countryside. How tragic, Uncle Joe got hypnotized and he's been feeling so good ever since, and by golly, he stopped smoking. Got a few extra pounds and he's feeling so really, and he's not afraid of thunderstorms anymore. So What you can do is just point out, well, if you're in a hypnosis, then you're going to come out. Either you're going to go to sleep and wake up naturally, or you're just going to come out spontaneously. I've had clients who didn't want to come back from hypnosis because it felt so good. And what I do at that point is say, well, you can stay in hypnosis as long as you want. The chair rents out for $200 an hour. And so they go, okay. Now, that's one of a fairly common misconception about hypnosis. Another one is the person is afraid that they're going to spill their deep, dark secrets. So back in the 60s, the CIA experimented with hypnosis as an interrogation technique. What happened is that the people they were interrogated got a little bit more relaxed. Hypnosis does not compel somebody to tell the truth. People who are in a hypnotic state can lie. And basically, if they're hypnotized, they're just going to be having a good time. You ask them a question, they don't have to answer. And so, what about this whole mind control thing? Okay, we see the stage show. Somebody's up there barking like a dog. Looks like they're just controlling their minds. Well, I've been in the stage show. The person, as a participant, the hypnotist said to all of us, I'm going to count to 3, snap my fingers, and you will laugh the best laughter of your life. I thought, okay, I'll do that. Sounds good. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And a little bit later, he said to me that he was going to count to 3, and it would be as if I had itching powder down the back of my neck. Well, I'm feeling pretty nice and mellow and relaxed, and I thought, I don't think so. So he counted to 3, snapped his fingers, and nothing. I knew when he told me I was going to have the itching, it's not going to happen. Someone in hypnosis has perfect control. They have the choice to whether to accept and go with the suggestion or not. Now, I had a client recently who was a smoker, and his whole deal was being in control. He knew he was in control of his smoking because he scheduled each and every one of them. He'd start to smoke by a certain point in his drive to work, so he'd be finished by the time he got there. He didn't smoke at work. He would, where he was working, so he'd schedule when he was going to smoke during the day. He was in control. He also started his own business, so nobody could tell him what to do. His clients could negotiate with him, but they couldn't boss him around. Certainly wouldn't let his employees tell him what to do, and at home, the wife and children were not giving him orders. And what I did with him, after I went through the normal things I say to everybody who comes in to stop smoking, was I said, you do realize that every example that you gave me of being in control of your smoking is an example of how smoking is controlling you. So he looked at a spot on the floor, his eyes defocused, completely still, for 20 minutes. He spontaneously went into a hypnotic state. He looks up at me, we talk for another couple of minutes, and something I said, he looks back at the same spot on the floor, eyes defocused, for another 25 minutes. And what I think was going on was he was unconsciously trying to find an exception to having been controlled by smoking. And he couldn't find one. And at the end of that time, I said, are you going to smoke again? He says, absolutely not. Completely congruent. And it's because he was in control that he stopped smoking. He was not going to let the cigarettes and the smoking control him. So let me give you an example of something I do with clients who tend to be oppositional in a particular way, or they're concerned in a particular way. Somebody says, I really want to stop smoking, but I don't think I can. Now what I do is a simple reversal of that, and I say, so you don't think you can stop smoking, but you really want to. And that puts their focus on really wanting to stop. Then I'll say, if you didn't believe you could do it at some level, you never would have shown up in my office, which is then helping them accept that, yeah, they do believe they can do it, which is then another step forward in helping them make that complete change. So a great way to get a referral from me is to talk about hypnosis a little bit with your friends. You mention a few of my stories, they're going to think about, well, will that work for me? Is it something I could use? Or what about Joan? She needs to stop smoking. Maybe I could talk to her about that. Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy. When somebody's interested in my services, you can send them to my website. There are videos up there, there are articles, there's information that they can get that will give them the opportunity to get a sense of me and what hypnosis is all about in a very safe and comfortable way. Wesley Anderson. Okay, thank you, Teresia. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the different ways in which people will practice hypnotherapy. Probably the most common and the simplest way for a hypnotherapist to work is with scripts. And the simplest scripts are basically just direct suggestion, one after the other after the other. You will sleep well tonight. You will sleep well every night. When you wake up in the morning, you will feel good and refreshed. Over and over and over again. Pretty simple structure. A more complex structure, the next level, the person might start using language a little differently. You're going to be surprised at how well you're sleeping. There's a technique called endpoint imagery. See yourself going to bed, sleeping through the night comfortably, and getting up refreshed in the morning and going on about your day in an energetic way. So that's see yourself doing that. That's endpoint imagery. The next level would be a technique, something in which there would be some interactions with the person along the order of getting rid of the things that are in the way of good sleep. Fred, we know you've been anxious, and we can take those anxieties, we can put them in that trash can, and when it's filled up with all of those anxieties, we're going to throw them in the furnace and watch them blow up. Okay, so, and then he would start laying her in, and you will sleep well at night. You might be surprised at how energetic you are through the days ahead. See yourself using the endpoint imagery. Another type of hypnotherapy is regression. Everybody's heard of past life regressions. All regressions don't go to a past life. We take an unpleasant emotion, we have the person sort of write it back in time to the first incident, and then they go through some manipulations of that to release those emotional energies. And I use pretty much all of those things, and I use a lot of stories because it's possible to communicate a tremendous amount inside of a single story. So imagine that you're my client, and I'm going to tell you my story, and then I'll explain some things about it. All right, so one of my clients came to see me for a stop smoking program. You're not here for that. However, his experience does have some pertinence. So he was in control. He told me that he went into business so nobody could tell him what to do. When he was growing up, his father was in the Army, and I said, oh, I bet your dad was having the kids line up at attention and almost saluting, and he goes, yeah, I don't know. And he tells me nobody tells him what to do. His clients could negotiate with him. His employees, well, they don't get to boss him around, and he doesn't take that kind of stuff from the wife and kids at home either. And he tells me that he plans out every cigarette because he doesn't smoke around other people. So he's in the car, he lights up by a certain point, he's finished by the time he gets to work. He has to plan when he's going to be going outside in places where he can smoke outdoors that are not going to be around other people. And I looked at him and says, you do realize that every example that you gave me of being in control of your smoking is an example of how smoking is controlling you. All right. He looked down at the floor, unmoving, unblinking, and he was gone for 45 minutes. He went into a spontaneous hypnotic trance, and he looked up at me at the end of the 45 minutes, and I said, are you going to smoke again? Absolutely not. He was done. And a lot of times during my sessions with clients, they will go into those spontaneous trances. It might be a few seconds, it might be a minute or two. 45 minutes has happened maybe once or twice in 27 years. That's rare. Okay, now, I've said this to you, my client, and here's what happens. After I tell this story, it's common that somebody might go into a few moments in response to something I've said or a question that I've asked them. And they're going through that process of making those changes in their own way. Now, I didn't get the luxury of asking that fellow who was gone for 45 minutes what went on during those 45 minutes. It's his privacy inside of his own mind. He may not consciously know. I don't, and I respect that. And I tell my clients that, and one of the points I make about that to my clients is, A, someone who does this is in control of the process of change that they're making. B, I'm respecting their process and their privacy. I don't need to know. I'm not the person who's controlling the process, which is a concern for a lot of people. As you know, people say, I don't want hypnotherapists to control my mind. Okay, here's a story you can use to tell them, to address that concern if they bring it up when somehow my name and hypnotherapy pop into normal conversation. When I told you about the fellow who went into trance for 45 minutes, I demonstrated what he did. I looked down, unmoving, unblinking. Now, what that does is it gives the other person, my client, the message, this is what a trance is like. This is what you may do, the client, as part of your process of making these changes in your own way. And modeling that state, showing them what to do is part of the communication, and it's a very powerful way to get them to follow along and do that themselves. So a great referral for me would be someone who's at the Rotary Club booking talks for his membership, which they have a talk every week or every meeting, and I can give them information, little bits and pieces from hypnotherapy that they can use in day-to-day conversations and in sales that don't involve a long, complicated process of hypnosis. Just little bits and pieces which they can take and begin using right away. I am Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy. Thank you, Nick. All right, this morning we're going to talk about my new stress reduction and overwhelm elimination protocol. I've been putting this together based on the principles of neurolinguistic programming, which is the study of subjective experience. So June is an executive. She's uptight. She's always feeling like she's got rushed and she doesn't have enough time to get things done. And so I asked her, well, how in the world do you do that? And so with some further questioning, it turns out that the structure of overwhelm is to simply imagine all the things that the person needs to do simultaneously. So think about everything you've got to do in the next 5 days and put them all on the same mental screen or describe them all to yourself at once, and it's too much. It's like eating a rhinoceros. We do things one bite at a time. If you think about increasing your revenue by 20% for next year, that's a big chunk. If you think about all the steps that you need to take in order, that's a lot more doable. And so one of the ways people procrastinate is by overwhelming themselves by thinking about it all at once rather than step by step by step. And what they do in their minds is essentially make a big screen with all of those things simultaneously represented. I got to do all of that. That is overwhelming. So the solution is to change the picture or change the way they structure that thought so that they may know they've got all of those things to do, but they can put them in order of priority or they can put them in order of time. So this morning, my priority after Power Core is to drive to my office where I'm having a meeting with somebody relating to my merchant services machine. Okay. And then I've got a client later on during the day. If I think about trying to do all of that at once, it can be overwhelming. And that overwhelm is stressful. So what I had June do was take her pictures and put them in order, one after the other, after the other, after the other, so that they made a line off to one side. And this is all relating to time. So one of the things about the way that overwhelm happens is that we think about everything all at once versus everything in bits and pieces through time. In neurolinguistic programming, they have developed a model called timeline. So how do we know what time things are going to be happening? People will say, well, let's look ahead to next year. That's telling me that their future is ahead of them. Let's put that behind us. Their future, their past is behind them. Let's set that aside and focus on what we're doing right now. Where's their future? It's over here. And if we take all of those different activities, those things that we need to get done, and put them on our timeline, let's say it's in front of me for sake of discussion, and put them in order so that I see what I see my client appointment is at 1 o'clock. So that's out further in the future than my 11 o'clock appointment with the merchant services person, which is further out in the future than meeting with one of my team members here this morning after the meeting. And that seems perfectly doable. Another thing that people will do to cause themselves to be anxious about time and not having enough time to get things done is the structure of the timeline itself. I asked June, okay, so how far out ahead of you on your timeline is 10 minutes? It's right here, like less than a foot out in front of her. And I had her push it out like a couple of feet, and I said, how about that? She felt a lot better. If 10 minutes is really close, then it seems like time is compressed. And so we can extend that time so that we can be relaxed about it. It's still 10 minutes. And if we structure things such that the most important things for us to be doing at the moment is coming right into the center of the timeline, and that's what we put our attention into, the next thing we have to do would be a little off to the side and then further out in time, and lesser priority are the things we're going to be doing later in the day or the week or the month. And as those priorities come to be most important, as those activities become the most important event, then they come into the center. And just doing that mechanically allows the person to be a lot more relaxed, and of course it's easy to rearrange priorities depending on circumstances that are changing in our lives. We may have to do something sooner or later depending on our current life circumstances. However, we can rearrange things on the timeline so that it stays very orderly, which allows the person to relax and get things done like eating the rhinoceros one bite at a time. Okay, so the way this is done is through an indirect, informal hypnosis. We can literally, once we notice the way we're structuring our time, we can literally manipulate it consciously and then lock those changes in place. The locking is a metaphorical, the click is a metaphorical locking something in place so that the person will keep it that way unless and until they decide to change it consciously. One of the things I want to emphasize here is that I'm working with stress reduction with these people. For our massage therapist who's working with releasing the physical tension, what I'm doing is complementary. With our life coach who helps people get their priorities in order, balance their lives between work and family and play, it's complementary. So that we work together, we can work together as a team to help somebody get more relaxed, be more efficient in using their time, and enjoy their lives in a much more balanced way. I'm Wesley Anderson. I'm Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy and Atlanta's foremost stop smoking hypnosis expert. My stop smoking program is structured so that the client gets as many sessions as they need to stop smoking. Once they've stopped, if they ever need help again later, they can come back at no additional charge. There's no limit to that. And occasionally, someone will go through a stressful situation, they'll regress back to the old behaviors, they'll start smoking again, or they'll think about it a lot. And I encourage them to come back right away, because using hypnotherapy, I can give them the resources so that they can handle those stressful situations in more resourceful and healthy ways. The Stop Smoking program has a single price to goal. I'm Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy, Atlanta's foremost stop smoking hypnosis expert. Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy and Atlanta's foremost hypnosis practitioner, discusses the advantages of using hypnosis to prepare for surgery. I really enjoy helping people get prepared for surgery. One of my clients came in and was going to have a kidney removed, and after the surgery reported back that he needed no blood transfusion during the operation. His doctors were quite amazed. And actually the operation was scheduled to run about 12 hours, and they finished 3 hours early. Another one of my clients reported a similar experience. He had a big chunk of his bowel taken out. He needed no transfusions either. There's a very simple way, using some symbols and some metaphors in hypnosis, to make this happen. My client came to see me because she was getting ready for some abdominal surgery, and as I did the session with her, I gave her some suggestions about reducing the bleeding, about pain control, and some suggestions that would enhance the rapidity of her healing. As it turns out, after she came out of her surgery, they gave her a clicker so that she could medicate herself coming out of the recovery room, and she used no pain medication at all. And while she was there in the hospital, she didn't need any pain medication, so her doctors let her out early. And she told me that afterwards, that even after she'd gone home, she still didn't use any pain medication, and that her doctors had told her that it was going to be 4 to 6 weeks before she could go back to work. And it was 9 days with her doctor's blessings. Her doctor was so intrigued by this, he says, "I want to write a book about this." And he was really excited until he heard the word hypnosis, at which point he lost all interest. This has been another story from the edge of hypnosis and NLP. This is Wesley Anderson, Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy.